Never in a million years did I think that Marvel would greenlight an animated Marvel Zombies R-rated production. But here we are. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We're here to talk about Marvel Zombies, a show that I never thought I would see that is really, let's be honest, less of a show, more of an animated film chopped up. But I kind of like that because chopped up, that feels like I'm making a zombie joke. That was not intentional. But I kind of like that it is split up into 4 parts because it allows you to kind of take little breaks. And it is a kind of high octane show, which is something that I like about it as a mini series. I like that it's shorter for a lot of reasons. I like that it doesn't stop, although there is some potential that I could see beyond. But we'll talk about that more when we get into the review. Before we do that, spoilers ahead. I am going to be talking about this show and about what happens in it, so you've been warned. And before we get into that, let me give you a little synopsis in case, you don't know or you just want to recap. So basically, Marvel Zombies is continuing the Marvel What If episode, which is inspired by the comics. The whole idea of this miniseries is that we are focusing on our survivors here. And while we were left on a kind of hopeful note in the What If episode with there maybe being, some solution to saving the world, in this series, it's a bit more bleak. And we are following Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, and her group as they find a sort of last hope for humanity, a transmitter that can send a signal to the Nova Corps, who potentially will have the technology to save all of Earth and cure everybody of the zombie virus because they're from space. Along the way, we also sort of meet up with Shang-Chi's group. We also run into Red Guardian's group, and even Thor and Valkyrie have their own group. And all of these kind of groups mush together to develop our ragtag crew of heroes who you would never really normally see together. And they are trying to get out to space to send this signal to the Nova Corps. But there are some things trying to stop them, seemingly. The Queen of the Dead, who is none other than Wanda Maximoff, aka Scarlet Witch, who seems to also have a better control on her powers and be using her powers to control the dead and make them do her bidding. So, will we get the signal to the Nova Corps? And if we do, will it be enough to save everyone? Well, you gotta watch the show to find out. I want to talk about the ending. I do want to talk about the ending, but I'm going to save that, I think, for my last point. So let's just talk a little bit about this show. And something that I think was really cool about it is that it actually made me want to revisit Marvel Zombies. And if you've ever heard me talk about Marvel Zombies on another channel I used to host on, you would know that Marvel Zombies is something I do not like revisiting because it's so gross, I think. I love horror, but it's kind of a gross series. And sometimes it feels like shock value for the sake of shock value. But there is also something cool about that series, and that is that we really focus on the zombie perspective as opposed to the survivor perspective, which is something you don't see in a lot of zombie stories, a lot of zombie media. And I think it's really cool because it also kind of uses this idea of the hunger, this never-ending hunger is like addiction. And so I think it's cool that you have those kind of parallels. And that was something that I was kind of missing from this show. But it is also only 4 episodes. It can only go so deep. And although there is part of me that wanted to see more of the depth, there is another part of me that kind of appreciates the brevity of this show and the fact that we didn't go too heavy into stuff. But there's still a lot to connect with. I mean, these are characters that you inherently already care about because you know them from the MCU or you know them from the comics. The fact that we're focusing on someone like Miss Marvel, on someone like Kamala Khan as our main character is also so interesting to me, and it makes me have so many thoughts on Zeb Wells' Spider-Man run and what happened with Miss Marvel and that, and just how much of that was editorial stuff, because I think Zeb Wells, being the person doing our screenplay here, who is also a comic book writer, wrote a series that I really love called Hellions from the Krakoa era of X-Men. Highly recommend you check it out. He seems to really understand Kamala and his approach to her in this show. And the other thing is choosing her as a central character is fascinating because she's such an optimistic, such a hopeful character. So to put her in such bleak circumstances and see her have everyone that she knows and loves taken from her, destroyed in front of her eyes, and try to see her hold on to that light. There's something really sad and like just tragic about that. And I think that comes from a place of really understanding what Miss Marvel represents in the larger Marvel universe as being one of the most optimistic characters. I think her and Squirrel Girl are really the two that I think of when I think of some of the most like peppy, positive characters that we have in the Marvel universe. So I think it's really cool because we do still feel a lot of connection with these characters. Either there's buy-in that you have from before, or you get some of the buy-in from the show. Now, not everyone gets moments to shine, and some voice performances resonate better than some others. I would say Aman Vellani delivers one of the best voice performances in this entire show. I think there's a lot of depth, and if you haven't seen the Miss Marvel series, I think you get a good sense in that show as well for just her capability as an actress and clearly her love of Marvel. She's just such a passionate nerd as well, like a fellow just comic book nerd who loves reading everything, you know? And I love that about her. So Blade is voiced by Todd Williams in the show, and he is another actor that I felt like really just brought it. I think Miss Marvel and Blade are two of my favorite characters in terms of the voice work that we get in this. But of course, I also love Simu Liu as Shang-Chi, and it's so great to see him and Awkwafina as Katie back. I'm a big Shang-Chi fan, so the fact that we haven't gotten Shang-Chi 2 yet, it like kills me, especially as someone who is also, you know, Simu Liu is from Toronto, I'm from Toronto, and it just makes me like really sad. But getting to see him in this, I thought he did a great job, and I also just feel like a lot of the performers really brought it. Some people didn't bring it as much, but usually those are people that had smaller roles, so you know, it is what it is. It wasn't my favorite like Haley Steinfeld performance, for example, as Kate, or Dominique Thorne as Ironheart. I thought that they were left a little to be desired, but they also were only in it for a little bit. So, you know, it is what it is. I feel like the idea that we get to have all of these characters together as well, such a random assortment of people. Only in Marvel Zombies can you bring all these characters together and also have them like run into Zemo and need to be on his underwater like submarine city and have them like have to confront a zombie Namor. You can only do that in Marvel Zombies. And my favorite thing too about Zeb Wells is I really like when he brings together these ragtag crews. That's something that I loved about Hellions, and that's something that I appreciate about this show, getting to see characters interact that normally we don't get to see interact, or that are maybe more underrated characters who deserve some time in the spotlight, honestly. I do feel that making Wanda the villain again here was a little like, I understand, but part of me was really rooting for her to be a hero. When she says, you know, Miss Marvel, like, this is your destiny and I need your help with this. And she seems to not necessarily want to stop our heroes, but want them to join with her. I was just really hoping that she would actually be a good zombie, even though I know that's not how Marvel Zombies works. But what I do love about it is that even though she was still a villain here, and I think it's been a little overdone at this point between the comics and the MCU, I do love that we kind of got out of this scenario with a bit of a House of M thing. However, the other part of that is that I don't love the kind of whole, it was all a dream, but really we're just living in an illusion, and now we have a new problem that we have to solve, ergo leaving the door open for a season 2. I think this was really good. I didn't think it needed to leave it open for a season 2, and I actually think it was good enough to warrant at least one more episode, or like a few more episodes. I think this would actually be really cool if they did a live action movie version of Marvel Zombies, which I don't know if that was ever on the table. I know the idea of this being a movie was on the table, and clearly they pivoted it towards being a miniseries, which it's basically just a movie cut up is what it feels like, an animated movie cut up. But there is a part of me that feels like, although they bet a lot on this show because they were willing to make it R-rated and they really go off, the way people are taken out, the fact that when Miss Marvel is, you know, fighting against Namor and she has her fist in his mouth, and I thought she could be bit at any point through her shields that she's making, she could be zombified, and that didn't happen. There is so much that works here and so many risks that Marvel did take, and I want to shout them out for that. But in some ways it feels a little safe and at times even formulaic. I think episode 1 is the weakest, and I do think it goes better as it goes along. So if you're watching this review because you watched episode 1 and then you tuned out and you want to hear more about the whole thing, I would say go back and watch it because it really does get better as it goes. Episode 2 for me is when it really started to pick up, and I do think it's a good show. I do think it's worth a watch, especially with spooky season upon us. However, at the same time, I just feel like they didn't take as many risks with the emotional buy-in with some of these characters and some of the depth that can be brought to something like Marvel Zombies which, like I said, is why I want to kind of revisit the comics, because I think there was some depth there that sometimes I write off a little bit too easily, and I just want to see what's going on and if there's more to it, because this made me reflect on that a bit more. Anyways, that's mostly what I think about Marvel Zombies. I did enjoy it. I do think it's a fun watch. I wish they hadn't left it so open-ended and so like, and then there's going to be a whole other season, because I think it's going to kind of ruin the idea, to be honest with you. But I thought it was really, really fun. I think overall, I'd give it a 4 out of 5. I thought it was pretty great, especially for what it is. But I do think that there's just a little bit more potential here than what we ended up getting. So that's why I'm going to leave a star off for now. Really surprised at just how much I loved Blade in this. Blade is Moon Knight. It fits, mwah, it's perfect. And that's all I have for this one, friends. Thank you so much for watching this video. And of course, if you like when I talk about Marvel, if you like when I talk about superheroes or comics, you need to check out this video over here. Seriously, you should do it. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, friends, as always, stay nerdy. Bye.